You are now listening to Talk Your Jits podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talk Your Jits podcast. This podcast is, as the name implies, all about jiu-jitsu. I'm your host, Lamar Smith, and today's guest is a black belt who trains at Gracie Barra Granby, located in Granby, Quebec, Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Laporte.
Thanks, man. Pleased to meet you, and happy to be here, man. Congratulations on your blog and your podcast. Sorry,
man. Thank you.
So
thank
that
you
one,
very much.
I'm the one who messed up that one, right?
Yeah, I know, right? It's all good.
All right,
it's all good. I mean, you can say it's a sort of a kind of a blog. It's an audio blog, but you know.
And let's blame it on the language. I'm a French guy, francophone guy, so let's blame it on the language.
Exactly. But yeah, man. First and foremost, man, I would like to, give you, thank you for coming on the podcast and doing this interview with me today, man. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you too, man.
So yeah, man, let's get started, man. Let's go ahead and give the people what they want. Go ahead and give us a little background of who you are and your journey, and let's rock it out.
All right, I can do that. My name is Eric. I'm a French-Canadian guy from Quebec, Canada. I live probably an hour from Montreal. So my journey started young, man. Not in jiu-jitsu itself, but in martial arts in general. I grew up with a father. Well, both my parents actually liked martial arts movies. So I grew up with martial arts movies, and I was a huge fan of wrestling when I was a kid, and I'm probably still today. So I always grew up with like links in a way or another to martial arts. Mm-hmm. And like younger, I had cousins doing karate, so I was training with them a little bit. And then I picked up boxing as a teenager. Well, that's a while ago, but I picked up boxing a little bit, and then moved to practice different martial arts over the years. When UFC came out a while ago, I remember UFC 4 had just came out, so that's a long time ago. And me and one of my friends, we rented that at the video store and watched UFC 1, 2, 3, and 4. And back then, Royce Gracie was just dominating everybody. And I remember saying to myself, I want to do that at some point. I'd like to learn that eventually. But I come from a small town, a small ski town, and there's no jiu-jitsu anywhere near here, especially back then. So I went to school in Montreal a little bit, came back here, and I started training martial arts more seriously later in life, probably like late 20s.
Okay.
And, eventually a guy started teaching in Granby, where I am, a while ago, in the exact same location I'm training now, but it was not the same school. So a guy started giving classes there. It was an MMA gym back then, and I fell in love with it, and then his main gym was about an hour from where I lived. And I just said, all right, let's go. And I just started training there. And that's how my jiu-jitsu career started, really. A friend of mine who did MMA told me, look, a jiu-jitsu guy's going to come teach at our school. I was like, all right, I'm in. So that's pretty much how it went from my background with jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And
so I'm sorry.
Apart from that, just as a background a little bit, apart from that, I don't do that. I don't teach full time. My real job is I work as a quality analyst for aircraft engines.
Oh, wow.
I work in aeronautics, and I have a couple of instructionals on BGG Fanatics. I have a blog, so a lot of stuff going around jiu-jitsu and martial arts and teaching, actually.
Okay, so you've been training for a very long time then.
In jiu-jitsu, not that much, probably around close to 10 years.
Okay.
But I've been doing martial arts for a while.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So do you remember like that first that moment that you fell in love with jiu-jitsu? I know you were talking about from UFC, watching Royce, Mr. Gracie do what he did in the UFC, in UFC 4. Actually, as the time of recording, yesterday was the anniversary of that day. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. So the 12th was like that day he won that, he won UFC. And
awesome.
We always talk about that. It's almost like Christmas to, the jiu-jitsu world. This is the day that, UFC, but jiu-jitsu was given to the public.
Yeah, we often see it's the day that changed martial arts forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so besides that, do you remember when you started training? When did you fell in love with jiu-jitsu?
Oh yeah, obviously. First of all, my interest was caught when I saw Hoist Gracie like tap big, juiced up like monsters that were 60 pounds heavier than him, and he started choking them out and armbarring them. I was like, "Wow, what the hell is that?" You know.
Right.
And I knew a little bit at that point what judo was, but not a lot. So my knowledge in grappling wasn't that very high. Like I knew karate and stuff like that, and boxing and kickboxing because I did it. You know, but I had no idea what like the differences between different styles of grappling. So I saw that, and that my interest was caught there. But eventually, my love for jiu-jitsu started the first class I actually did. I went there, and the teacher was you know, when if you watch ADCC and you look at the heavyweights, you know, muscular guys, big traps, and like 1 inch thick ears, you know. So my first coach ever in jiu-jitsu like was like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I looked at him, I was like, oh man, this guy's gonna kill me. But I didn't know jiu-jitsu that much. Like I knew a little bit what it was, but I never did it. So I had no idea how much he would kill me, you know. So and then like, and I was looking at other smaller guys, but they did MMA, so they had a little bit of grappling, and they were mopping the floors with me at the first class, and I was like, wow, I don't. These guys are like white belts. Like I can't even imagine what that guy can do with me, you know.
Right.
So I went to see him, and I was like, hey, do you want to roll after the class? He was like, yeah, sure, man. And I remember he got his first grip, and I tried to break it, and I was like, "Oh man, oh this is not going to be cool." And he just passed my guard. He got a side mount, and I tapped. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "What the hell is this?" You know. So I was hooked right then. My first class. My first class, I knew I was like, "There's a guy that did jujitsu like 3 times, and he armbarred me like 6 times." So I was like, "Okay, I need to learn this. This is pretty fun." And fundamentally, like I'm somebody who always liked wrestling. And I used to fight with my cousins all the time. I have like 6 cousins from the same city, same little town I live. We're all the same age. So we used to fight all the time. So like it has a lot of stuff appealing for me. Like it had that at least at first. Since then, there's a lot of stuff that added. But yeah, my first class, man, I was hooked.
Yeah, I mean, I was very intrigued my first time stepping in a jiu-jitsu gym. But yeah, like going off of what you were saying, like my instructor, Zachary Holston, he's a big guy, tall, big guy. And when you see a guy, like, when you walk into a school and you see the teacher and he's like, yeah, a big guy, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking to myself like, holy crap. Like this dude is gonna, yeah, like you said, like this dude is gonna, destroy me. Like obviously, when I started training, he was a brown belt, and it was just like, okay, he has to be good. He has his own school. He's a brown belt, and then later on find out he was under Master Joe Moera, and it was just like, oh man, so much here. And then like once you really know the style of jujitsu, like that smash, that pressure pass in jujitsu, it's like very very intimidating.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, after a while, after being destroyed and crushed, as a white belt, but now it's like, man, love it. I love it. I couldn't imagine life without it.
for sure, for sure. There's no way I could either. Trust me. You realize that once you get injured or something like that, and once you get injured and you kind of spend a couple of days away from the mats and it starts to like work on you a little bit and start to be heavy because you're missing it. Like I need to train all the time.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not if I'm not on the mats, I'm reading about jujitsu. I'm watching instructionals. I'm taking notes. I'm working on my I have a lot of notes about jiu-jitsu, so I'm just studying. If I'm not on the mats, I'm studying, preparing classes and stuff like that. So it's part of every day of my life.
So it's safe to say. I mean, obviously, after 10 years, it consumed you.
Oh yeah, man. Because honestly, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was teaching. I was a black belt in kempo,
Uh huh.
and I was already teaching. I had classes in kempo. I was teaching self-defense. I was giving self-defense seminars. I was training in Taiho Jutsu, which is similar to Krav Maga but Japanese. Like that's what the army and the police officers in Japan pretty much learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I was training a couple different martial arts, and I started jiu-jitsu. And honestly, like all the rest went all through the window. Like the more I trained jiu-jitsu, the less I trained the rest. And eventually, within probably 2 years, I just stopped everything and just trained jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and it's I don't know like I haven't necessarily figured out what is it about jujitsu that that gravitates you to it so strongly. Like, yeah, you have a lot of different forms of martial arts that you can learn. Like I've done MMA. I've done a little bit of karate. Ahasaki, just to name a few. But it was just something about jujitsu that completely engulfed me. Like you said, like, if you're not on the mats, you're mentally training. You're watching videos, you're taking notes, you're doing all the stuff that's jujitsu related. And I did not do that with any other form of martial art.
Yeah, me neither.
Like you said, I wake up and breathe jujitsu. I eat, sleep, and breathe jujitsu. Like, I'm trying to figure out how can I incorporate jujitsu in my everyday life, which I obviously successfully been able to. But it's like I still want more. I still want more jujitsu.
Yeah. And how's that going with your friends that don't train or family?
It's funny because I always get into these moments because, like, I'm literally I have a cousin who's in New York who trains in martial art. Me and him, we talk back and forth, but he's literally like the only one. But my cousins and family that don't train, they be like, oh man, you looking good. What are you doing? I'm like, I train jiu-jitsu. And they was like, oh man, I want to get out there and do it. And I'd be like, I don't want to be that guy, but I'd be like, hey, let's talk about jiu-jitsu. Like, let's come in my office. Let's talk about jiu-jitsu for like 4 hours. Well, you listen to me talk about jiu-jitsu for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I try not to be annoying about it, but it's like I can't help. Like, even like my wife can contest to this too. No matter what the conversation can be about, I always circle back to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I'm sorry. I know this is getting annoying. She's like, nah, I'm pretty much used to it now. I'm like, okay, well, good. But let me tell you about this here. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, so you're used to it now. So now I can like step it up a notch a little bit.
Right.
It takes a lot of place, and obviously when you hang out with friends that do jujitsu, like you only talk about that pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And but when you're with people that don't train, it does, like you said, it does often. You figure out a way, like unconsciously, to just turn in that direction a little bit in the conversation. So it's easy to apply, but there's many reasons, I guess. You said you don't know why it's so like you get so much caught in it, I guess. But there's many reasons, I think for that. So if you want, I can tell you my perspective on that if you want. But
by all means, man,
all
enlighten
right.
us.
So well, it's my perspective. So I'm pretty sure like most people are going to relate to what I'm going to say. The first thing that I really like about jiu-jitsu is how liberal it is.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, if you did karate a little bit, you probably saw that. And then anybody that did like more traditional martial arts, you have an exam and they're going to show you a kick, for example, and that kick has to be done perfectly. Like some martial arts, you have to do katas, and if the katas are not done right, you're not going to pass your belt.
Mm-hmm.
Jiu-jitsu is not exactly like that. Most of the time, they're going to show you a move, and this is something I always say in my class. I repeat this every week to my students. Like, I'm going to show you how I do it, but this is my body type, my flexibility, my this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do after that, I'm going to show you the move. You're going to try it that way, and we're going to adapt it to you. So I have students that are going to do moves I showed them, but in a completely different way because they're more flexible. They're taller, shorter. It's very different. So there's a very liberal aspect with that. Like, not only are there many different styles. If you look at a competition, you're going to have, like you said earlier, like smash passers. You're going to have like these guys that invert and berimbolo in your legs and stuff like that. Very flexible. You're going to have the wrestler type, very explosive. You're going to have another one that's very passive and kind of locks you in different lapel guards. So there's many different styles in the same martial art, and this for me is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a very liberal way of applying every technique and adapting, and you have the freedom to apply them for you, which is something that is very, very appealing for me because I'm kind of an outside the box guy, so I like to like do my own way and like kind of do my own path and walk on my own track. So I learned stuff from my teachers and I adapted it to me. And in other martial arts, it has gotten me in trouble a little bit because my teacher's like, no, you need to do it like this, and like this is how we do it and stuff like that. And jiu-jitsu, you don't have that. So this is something very, very, very appealing for me.
Yeah.
So that would be for me the first step.
And I guess I did know because I kind of touched bases on that a few interviews back when we were just talking about how organic jiu-jitsu is, because you like you said, you have the different body types, you have you have to kind of switch up a little bit depending on your opponent, depending on your current position and stuff like that. And like with like with not shaming or bashing any other martial art. I just want to get that out the way first because I don't want this come back to bite me. But like yeah, when you have like karate and you're doing your katas and with taekwondo, everything has to be precise. Like you have to get this kick exactly the way that it's supposed to look. Like if you're supposed to do a question mark kick, it has to look like a question mark kick. You can't just half-ass a kick and be like, okay, that's it. No, with jiu-jitsu, you kind of have that little bit of freedom. Like, okay, if I'm going for a style of an arm lock, I don't want to go into too much detail for the people who don't train jiu-jitsu, but if I'm going for an arm lock, like an Americana, I might have to change it up depending on the person's body type. If their person has flexible, their flexibility is high in their shoulders. If their arms are shorter, if their arms are longer, if they're stronger, if they're this and if they're that, you have to be able to adapt and change in order to, do this one particular technique.
Yeah.
So, I totally
and,
agree with that.
And that's interesting. That's one of the reasons why, for me, it's really interesting. Another thing that covers a little bit what we're talking about is one thing that fascinates me about jiu-jitsu is how, like we talked about, like different styles and all that, and like everything kind of gets adapted to the body types and body styles and all that. One thing that I really, really like is how complex it is.
Mm-hmm.
And like just like you, I don't want to bash martial arts because like other styles, because I've done a lot of them, and they're all fun in a way. Like they all have something that they bring.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I loved about jiu-jitsu is the complexity of it. It's so broad. There's so many techniques, so many styles, and it's evolving so fast that it's hard to keep up. And like unless you do this full time, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah. Like you definitely can be left in the dust very, very fast. Like you miss a week of class, and it's like, oh man, how far back am I?
Yeah, because it's they show the technique the week before, and like people are trying to pull it on you and have no idea what's going on, really. Especially at a lower belt. Like when you get to purple belt and you're a little bit higher, like you can see you understand what's happening. But like for lower belts, if they miss a week or two, like that can make a big difference because when they come back, everybody's pulling these moves on them, and they don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah. And just to kind of backtrack on what you were saying about teaching teaching other people jiu-jitsu, like the lower belts and stuff like that. And I will go over a technique, and they're like, "Man, I just can't get this right." He's like, "Well, what are you like? What's going on? Why do you feel like you can't get this technique?" Well, I'm trying to do it like you did it. That's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem right there. You're trying to do it like I did it. I'm only showing you like what it looks like. You kind of have to take the initiative to make it a work and adjust it to your body type and whoever you're repping with. And being an instructor, and I know you can probably agree with this as well. When it comes to repping techniques, I encourage everybody to pick another partner. Like you do this technique 2 or 3 times with this person, and then you switch to someone of a different body type. That way you can get used
I agree with that.
and like adjust, like, okay, yeah, this person over here who has shorter arms, I can hit it easily, but this person over here who has wider shoulders, I might not be able to hit that on. I might have to make that adjustment. If you don't work this stuff with different body types, if you can, you're never going to find that sweet spot that's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, honestly. And I think people probably don't do that enough. It's very, very important to try and be on different people because it's going to force you to think more about the concept rather than the technique itself. Because when I teach, normally I'm going to explain a move. Like if for example, you talked about an Americana, I'm going to explain, like I'm going to show the Americana in a simple way, but then I'm going to enter the details. And what I want the students to understand, it's not really the Americana itself. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing while I'm applying this technique. So that's why sometimes I'm going to explain, like it's important to like pin the shoulders, for example, have your elbows on the ground while you're setting up the technique position first, and then you go for the submission. And I try to explain the details one by one and bring them to a point where they understand why I'm doing everything I'm doing, really. So after that, once they get the concept, it's going to be easier for them to apply on most people, but they need to try it. They need to figure it out. They need to, all right, for like he showed it this way, but I'm a lot taller. So yeah, I agree with what you said. I think it's a very, very good point, and it's very sometimes forgotten, I would say.
Yeah, very, very, very
Yeah,
forgotten. And I'm an advocate for it. I'm like, look, you like jujitsu is one of those sports where you get out what you put in. Like if you're not busting your hump on the mats, you're not going to see that progress that you want. If you come in, just haphazardly doing techniques, or you're showing up late for classes, and you're just kind of like just there to be there, and you're like, man, why am I not getting any better? You have to put the work in. You have
yeah,
to put the work in to be able to get this stuff. Like nothing is handed to you, especially at my school. Like if if I didn't know this stuff, I would have been, I would have never tested to be tested for brown belt, or just, being able to progress as far as I did, because I do know people that's been training X amount of years, and it's like, man, I've been a blue belt for like 10 years. Like I come to class every day. Like, well, yeah, you might come to class, but what are you doing? Are you actually participating in class? Are you, putting forth the effort? Are you just showing up for participation points?
yeah, exactly. And now you're learning because the thing we hear often, because when I was doing my previous style in Kempo, there was a schedule, and people knew that after the X months they were getting like their yellow belt, and after X number of months they would get their test for their orange belt, for example. Jiu-jitsu, all schools are different, obviously, but I think it's about like everybody learns at different speeds, and that will create sometimes a gap. Like there's a minimum amount of time people should. In most schools, that's the case. That you have a minimum amount of time that you need to be at a certain belt to get access to the passage. But it's about knowledge, really. So like that's how I work.
Yeah.
So some people could like have the knowledge after a year, but they don't meet the minimum requirement. So we kind of wait a little bit. But some people after 2 years, they're like, we don't feel they're ready. Like, okay, the person has the minimum 2 years example for from purple to brown example, but he's missing a little bit of knowledge. He's missing a little bit of the finesse. So people, like you said, that are there and train a little bit more seriously will have that. And some people that's there like just for a more social activity than train jiu-jitsu itself is it's probably going to take longer, and that's why. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I employ everybody who either started their journey, thinking about starting their journey, or haven't realized this yet. I've probably said this before, but I know I said it numerous times out in the world. Like you have to come into jujitsu with an open mind.
Yeah,
Like you can't come in thinking that you deserve to be, oh, I deserve to be this belt rank, or I deserve to be this and that. Like no, you go in, you learn jujitsu for you, and all that stuff will come. Obviously, when you first start, yeah, you want to see the stripes, you want to see the colors change on your belt. Because I can admit I was that way when I first started. Like when I got my first stripe, I was like, man, what can I do to get my second? And oh man, what can I do to get my third? And it's like, oh man, what can I do to get my blue belt? But when I tested for my blue belt, and once I realized like, man, like damn, this was a lot of fun. It was I knew the stuff because I was putting the time and effort to do it. But after that, man, I was like, you know what, man, I just want to train. Like,
yeah,
excuse my French, but fuck the colors, fuck the stripes, and all that other stuff. Like, I just want to get my ass on these mats, and I just want to get beat up, beat somebody up, and go home happy.
yeah,
And then, like, once you grasp that concept, just go in, train, get as much as out of it as you can. Yeah, the belts will come, the colors will change, man. You just gotta work. You just gotta work.
yeah. I agree with that. And I think most people, no, pretty much everybody get to that point eventually. If you keep training for long enough, you're going to get to that point. Some people get to that point at blue belt, like you said, but some people are going to get to that level at maybe purple, maybe sometimes even brown. And you get to a point where like people ask you about your belt passage, your next belt passage, or your next stripe, and you're like, I don't know, man, I don't really care to be honest.
Yeah.
So you get to that point, you're like, I just want to train. So how about we roll instead of talking about my future belt passage?
Right. Because even when I was being asked like, yeah, man, you know, when you training for your brown belt, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like when you training for this, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Go ask my coach.
Like yeah, and I don't even ask. Cause like another guest, and I know my instructor is like this as well because we talked about it so many times. Like, don't go ask when you're gonna test. That's a no. That is a big no. Like you can literally be like, the instructor was gonna announce that you was gonna test. Like for example, yeah, my instructor, like he was gonna announce that night after class, like, hey, XYZ is testing for their blue belt or getting ready to test for their blue belt in a couple weeks. But if you come in like, hey, you know, coach, man, what I'm gonna be testing, you just added like another month without even knowing. Like, no, because if you feel like you have to come and ask that you're to ask that you're ready to take your test, you're not ready.
Yeah,
You're not
and
ready.
most people I've trained, and most most places I've trained at were like that too. I remember my first coach when I was a black, because I changed school eventually. At purple belt, I changed banner, I changed schools for many different reasons that we can get into that later if you want. It's a pretty interesting story, but
Yeah, definitely.
like for that stuff for the belts, I personally am not like that. I've had students that came to ask me and like, because I'm not the head. I used to have my own school, but now I'm not the head coach at my school. I'm a coach, but I'm not the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
But people sometimes come and ask me like, "Do you think I'm ready for my belt? Like, and when am I going to pass?" The answer is pretty much always similar. Like, the first thing I ask you, do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
And most of the time, people are like, "Well, I'm not sure." I'm like, well, you better be sure before you ask me. You know?
Yeah.
But if somebody asks me for a belt passage, I don't really mind, but I'm going to be brutally honest about why. If it's a no, why it's not. It's a no, and I'm going to tell them. But I think I see that as being constructive for the person.
Mm-hmm.
That person is going to be able to take that and do whatever he wants with it, he or she. But the person is going to be able to take that and do whatever that person wants to do with it. Like either take it as a motivation and be like, okay, I need to work on this and this, or be like, oh well, and maybe I should have it, and whatever. But I was all my coaches pretty much did not like these questions, and I understand why. Because at some point, if you allow that, it's going to become a pattern for most people, and you're just going to be like overwhelmed by all these questions about promotions. But I personally don't really mind that much. I don't mind if somebody comes to tell me, and most of the time, like, when am I going to pass? I'm like, well, if some people ask me when are they going to pass, and it's the head coach's decision, I'm going to tell them, well, you're going to pass when he decides you pass.
Right.
That's it. There's no other way. Like when he decides you're ready, you're going to be ready. It's not you that decides, and it's not me. I do have people that I'm the one in charge of their passing, and when they talk to me, one of them came to see me because most don't, but one of them came to see me. It's like, well, what do you think about when do you think I'm going to pass my belt? I told him what I wanted. I was like, well, from you, I want this. And the person was like, all right, so so we have work to do. I was like, exactly. And the same day he started working on what I told him. So eventually that led to a belt because he was more than ready when he got it, So it's different mentalities. I don't really mind, but I know that a lot of people do, and I think that's fine. When you have a school, you're the one who puts the rules down, So if the head instructor is like, I don't want to hear about this, and I'm going to give you a month if you just ask me, I'm fine with that too. It's the person's decision. Really.
Yeah, because I feel like, yeah, like like we were saying earlier, once you get in that mindset of like you're chasing the wrong thing, you kind of lose a part of what's important about jiu-jitsu. Because it's to me personally, it's not about the belt colors. It's not about. I mean, yeah, it's cool to think like, yeah, I'm a brown belt or I'm a black belt. I'm this, I'm that. But like, no, it's like I love the knowledge behind jiu-jitsu. I love what jiu-jitsu, how jiu-jitsu makes me feel throughout the day or after training or even on my way to the gym, just thinking about jiu-jitsu. Like that's what I love about it. I'm like, yeah, it's cool that I can say, yeah, I'm a brown belt. I'm this, I'm that, or I teach, I'm that. Like, yeah, no, I love the fact that I'm just in a sport that I love so dearly.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Trust me, I'm the same. Like, you see all these memes about like the white belts having a bunch of jiu-jitsu t-shirts. Well, I'm a black belt with a bunch of jiu-jitsu t-shirts. I'm still like that. Even 10 years later, I go to work in a like corporate world, but with jiu-jitsu t-shirts. I don't care.
That I am, dude. I
So
am the
yeah,
same way. I got hoodies, I got T-shirts. I anything jujitsu related that I can find is either in my Amazon cart or it's on the way.
yeah, exactly,
Like I
exactly.
am a walking poster child for jujitsu.
And it's fine, it's and sometimes you walk and you see a jiu-jitsu t-shirt on somebody, you're like, yeah, you don't know him, but you're like, you talked about that on one of your podcasts.
Yeah,
I remember you speaking about that with one of the guys. You're like, you don't know the guy, but you just competed against him, and you speak 2 minutes, and he's your pro.
yeah, he's
And
family.
that's a true thing. So sometimes I walk and I have a jiu-jitsu t-shirt, and somebody else walks on the other side, and he sees my t-shirt, and we make eye contact for a second. And we're like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know how long I've been training. I don't know how long he's been training, but we relate on something, that's for sure. But we don't know each other, but
Mm-hmm.
we do relate on something for sure. So it's fun. It's fun. It's a nice culture. And one of the biggest strong points about jiu-jitsu is the community behind it.
Oh
In
yeah.
many ways, like I see this in two levels really. The first level is the community itself. Just look at like what's happening right now. We're having a podcast on jiu-jitsu because we both love jiu-jitsu and we just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, so this is an amazing thing that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and jiu-jitsu is growing very very fast. And the community on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Reddit, and all that, the community is very, very, very in it. So people talk about it, they post about it, so many pictures and requests, and so many like you meet so many people just because of that, and you just keep talking about it, and you meet new people, and you go to places, and you meet other people, and you compete, and you make friends. The community is very, very open in general, and this is a very, very awesome thing.
Yeah, man.
It's great, great, great.
And just going back to like yeah, like the jujitsu community, it seems like it's so small because like a lot of people necessarily don't talk about it. But when you step into like these Facebook groups or or Instagram or yeah, just social media in general, and then you're finding so many people that train jujitsu, and it's like, oh man, that's a family member right there. Like,
Oh
that's my
yeah.
brother, that's my sister or whatever. And for example, I'm on my way home from work, and I like this white pickup truck passes me, and on the back of the window was a Gracie Barra logo, and I was like, "Ooh, he trains." So I'm trying to match his speed in traffic, like trying to get his attention. But every time we stop, either his car was too far up or my car was too far up. So I was like, "Man, whatever." But we just so happened to catch this light at the same time, and I'm like, I gotta ask him. So I rolled the window down. He rolled the window down. And we had like a quick little 2-3 minute conversation about training and jujitsu and everything else while the light was green. So he was like, "All right, man, I'll catch you another day or whatever the case may be." But it was like I would have never done that with anything else but jujitsu.
Yeah, exactly.
So
No, 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 no. That's for sure. It's super cool because people slowly are getting into that.
uh
That's
huh.
part of the community growing so fast, and people are so into it. Like we said earlier, like our situation is pretty much the same. Like we talk about jujitsu a lot more than we probably should, and we just love it so much that we're super into it. Well, that's the case with everybody that trains for it, trains jujitsu. So that's the case of everybody. So we're all looking for somebody with cauliflower ears or a t-shirt or a sticker on their truck. So we're all looking for that in a way and trying to say hi and just acknowledge, like just give the hand sign, something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing. And speaking of the community, you know what? One thing that fascinates me about jiu-jitsu with the community, and
Mhm.
this is something I've never seen in any other sport ever. I'm a huge basketball fan, and obviously you don't see that in basketball. In jiu-jitsu, you have the greatest coaches in the world. You have the greatest athletes in the world, and they're all very accessible.
Yes. Yes.
Like this is completely unheard of in any. If you know any other sports, any other sport that's the same way. Like honestly, off the bat, I can't think of one. Jiu-jitsu is an amazing place. Like I went to ADCC in 2022 in Vegas. I was there for a couple of days, and like the number of pictures I took with these greatest athletes in the world, they're just so easy to access, so friendly. Everybody's cool. I haven't seen that. And you can go trend. You can, if you want, if you tell, oh, my favorite is Dana, or my favorite is like Atos in San Diego. Like you can fly there and spend a week there and train with them.
Yeah.
And you're going to be training with Cannon Duarte and the Rotolos and all these guys. And like Andre Galvao is going to be giving the class, and you can just talk with them, train with them. Like you can't go
awesome.
you can't train with LeBron James if you want, So it's a very different thing. I've never seen that in anything.
Yeah, and just like my instructor's master, Master Joe Moera, this dude, he has affiliate schools all over the world.
Yeah,
he's posted every day he's posting on social media about another school he just left, and he's going to another one. But the fact that I have access to him, I can text or call him and be like, hey, how you doing, what's going on, let's talk jiu-jitsu. And if he have the time, as busy as he is, he's going to give me a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's so awesome. Like, yeah, you can't reach out to like other celebrities or other people like in different sports that you're passionate about. Maybe because they're a lot busier, I guess you want to say, because they're they're on the road a lot, or they play 82 games or how many games a year, so they're necessarily not available. But yeah, at the same time, I can reach out to a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu community that is that busy, and I might not get a reply right away, but I'm going to get a reply eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that, man. Like I haven't ran into any like gatekeepers in person, or people that just think their jiu-jitsu is just the top notch. Everybody I've talked to so far about jiu-jitsu, no matter the rank, from white belts up to 4th degree black belts, all gave me the same reception. Man, what you're doing is such a cool idea. I would love to be on your show. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Like when I was reaching out to people that was responding to the post about doing this podcast, and I'm like, yeah, what's your rank? What's this and that? And it's like, purple belt, black belt, black belt, black belt. And it's like, oh man, this is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's a great idea, and that's what we all want. We just want somebody to talk jiu-jitsu with. So that you're building a podcast on that. So obviously you're going to have a lot of names. People are going to want to do that because it's fun. It's super cool, and it's a chance to talk between. It's a conversation between two people on what they live and what's happening in their life and how they feel about the sport they're probably the most passionate about. So it's a very, very it's a winning combination for sure. It's easy to win with this. And like I said, I congratulated you right off the bat, because I think it's a great idea what you're doing right now. It's super awesome.
Because I was really hesitant to start this, because it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, man, what can I do? I want to do something more jiu-jitsu related. I'm like, okay, yeah, I train a lot. I teach when I can, and I'm like, okay, I've been bouncing back and forth about the idea about doing a podcast, and I'm like, man, what should I talk about? But then I don't know why it took me so long to realize, like, dude, just talk about jiu-jitsu. Like, what else is there to talk about? Like, yeah, the world is crazy and everything is going on. That talking about that stuff every day gets depressing. And I'm like, okay, what can I talk about that's going to bring me happiness, or bring the listener happiness, or my guest happiness? Jiu-jitsu.
Obviously.
And any like the few people that reached out to me that don't train jiu-jitsu, it was like, man, I listen to your podcast, and it's awesome to hear like everyday people like us doing this type of stuff. And I'm like, that's what I was hoping for. Like, that's what I want. Like, from people who don't train jiu-jitsu, like, or to the people who want to train, or the people who's been doing it for as long as us. Like, I want that avenue and platform for everybody. Cause yeah, even down to white belts who I've talked to, that's like, man, I only been training for 2-3 months. I really don't have a story to tell. Yeah, you kind of do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you stepped on the mats, you ventured out to something that you never thought you were going to venture out to. That is a story to tell with itself, because if you mention jiu-jitsu to anybody who trains, their face is going to light up.
Oh yeah.
No matter where you at, like, you hear blah blah blah, you can hear every single conversation going on around you. It sounds like garble, but jiu-jitsu is going to stand out.
Yeah.
Your head's going to peek up like, ooh, someone knows what I'm going to go find this person. That's my friend over there.
Well, you see there's a meme with Kobe Bryant about that. There's like a crowd, and his head is kind of sticking out.
Yep.
And that's it. Like when you hear somebody talking about jiu-jitsu, your head kind of pops out like,
That is
who's
it.
talking
It's
about just
either
right here? Like,
if it's either jujitsu or comic books or anything comic book related. If I hear it, then my head peaks up like, "Ooh, hello."
yeah,
Like,
for
how are
sure.
you? We're now friends. Come on, let's talk.
Yeah, you're gonna bump into them to them by accident at some point.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But yeah. So just kind of backtrack. So you were saying like you switched schools when like when you
Yeah,
were
yeah,
like
yeah.
hit
That's
purple. So yeah,
yeah.
let's talk about that.
If I just speak a little bit about my jiu-jitsu journey, which
Yeah.
is I think a little bit different than most people. Like I told you earlier, my first class I was really hooked, and the guy I was teaching was a beast, and he's very known out here in Quebec. Like he competed at the world level. He won the worlds in gi and no gi, so he's a monster, And I was hooked there, but honestly, at his gym it was very very intense, but I never got injured. I was getting my ass beat up seriously for at least 2 years as a white belt. I was getting like torn apart every class, but it was still fun. But it's still safe. I was tapping 7, 8 times a roll, but
Oh yeah.
I never got injured. Sometimes I was rolling with him, and he would go pretty intense, but he never hurt me. So that was super cool. But it was an hour and 15 minutes away because he taught in Granby a couple months only. you know.
Mhm.
And then he opened his real school in, like a little bit over an hour away from here, and that was the closest school right now, with the teacher higher than blue belt. So because I knew a couple places around that they had blue belt teachers, and they were super good. Honestly, they were good, great teachers and great people, but I wanted I wanted a black belt teacher.
Mhm.
So when I went at that school, they had a bunch of blue belts, a bunch of purple belts, and him as a black belt. And so I trained there for a couple of years, 2.5 years maybe. So a couple of months after my blue belt, I was still training. I was still teaching Kempo. I was not training really anymore, but I was still teaching. But I talked to the owner of the school. I was like, it would be okay with you if I would start teaching jiu-jitsu around here, And I didn't want to charge a lot. What I wanted was to keep training at that gym. And sometimes instead of driving 3, 4 times a week, an hour and a half, over 2 hours back and forth, I was like, I'm going to have some trainings close. So I built a team. One of my friends was my partner. We were both blue belts. We passed our tests together, and we both started teaching together. And we started to build a team. So we had like 15 white belts training with us, and we were just training. So that was fun. It was kind of like this similar thing as the Gracie garages you hear at the
Mhm.
Gracie University.
Mhm.
Just drop in and come train, and that's it. That's fun. So you build a gang training together, but there's nobody there giving promotions. And eventually it was starting to be far, and I was like, man, this is a lot of road and a lot of time on the road. And my job is very demanding and starts early, so I was like, I'm beat up. Every time I train the next day, I slept 5 hours and I go to work. So is there a way to have a school closer? And I called my friend. One of my friends was a brown belt. He was like, and I asked him, I was like, would you be interested in coming to teach him like where I'm teaching? He's like, yeah, sure. So he started teaching there, and he became my coach. He was a friend of mine, and he became my coach. And with him, eventually, we opened our own gym, a kilometer from my house. So obviously, that's a big upgrade. It was a very nice gym, a great gang of people. We had a lot of fun. But me and that guy, he was a friend of mine. He still is today, but we were uncompatible for business. We had
Mhm.
very different mentalities, fundamental mentalities about how things should go, and the way, like, he's more intense and more Japanese style, very discipline oriented, and I'm very laid back as a person. And was like, no, you can't do that because you need to respect the people. And so we had a little conflict of like fundamental values. And it's not that he's not a good person. He's not a good coach. We just had a little differences, and it was starting to be heavy. And during that time, a guy opened a gym in 10 minutes from my home, but in the same place I started doing jujitsu the first time. So I was like, oh, I know that place, obviously. So I went to see there because a friend of mine started training there. So I just went to see what it looked like. And keep in mind, during that time, I was the owner of my gym. I was co-owner. I was not the sole owner. We were co-owners. And what happened at some point is our conflict became greater to a point that we were having trouble talking to each other.
Oh.
like he was annoyed by me, I was annoyed by him, and it was not working. And I was a purple belt. Probably a year after my purple belt, I was like, I'm starting to lose for the first time ever interest in jiu-jitsu. Like I was starting to lose my passion. I didn't want to train really anymore. I was like, I'm losing my passion. This is not normal, not for me.
Right.
Like I eat this. So like, no, there's something wrong here. I need a break. And we had a fight at some point, and I was like, well, just give me the papers last Sunday and I leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. He was like, if you want to leave, that's fine. So we had a very friendly split. He kept the school and everything. He kept the mask. So we had a deal together, and I left. And then I was like, I need time off. I need the time for myself. But back then, like I told you, a friend of mine was training in Granby, that new place. So we get to a point where my friend, I was still training at home. I have a gym at home and mats. So I was training at home and with some close friends. And what happened is my buddy was going to pass his blue belts. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to check out your stuff and I'm going to be there for your belt promotion. So I went there, and the coach was super welcoming and very, very nice. And he was like, well, you can always come back. I was like, well, honestly, like I'm in a rough spot right now. I just split from my gym, and I'm in a rough spot. He's like, I'm not forcing you to do anything. If anytime you want to come, just drop by, have fun. You can just sit and talk about jiu-jitsu, or you can train and do whatever you want. I was like, okay. So slowly but surely, I started to go back there, and eventually, I was like, all right, like this place is nice. It's a very different. It's kind of a new vibe. It's not that it was that different of a vibe, but it was a new vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I feel like I can kind of start over again here, and that's where I'm still in right now. So that's why I left the gym. Like we were having a conflict, and like I said, it's not that the other guy was wrong and I was right, or the opposite. Is we had a difference of opinion, and it was starting to be heavy on both of us. It was heavy on him, heavy on me, and we just decided to split. So I went there, and at some point, my new coach was who's also a monster. To be honest, he won the Masters, but he's been grappling for 40 years, and he's like 45, 6. So, so
Okay.
he he was like, well, I can't be there during that day. Do you think you could fill the spot for me and teach? I was like, yeah, sure. And I liked it. I enjoyed it because I like teaching. In most of the hobbies I had in my life, I eventually became a teacher. And I give a lot of trainings at work. So that's part of my life, sharing knowledge and helping people. That's part of my life. So I started taking classes like this. I started teaching on the Thursdays. I was teaching both classes, and eventually I kind of had a solid spot without really planning it. I was teaching every week, and that's pretty much how it started. So yeah, that's the story about that split, and I'm still there today. A couple of years later, I got my black belt, brown belt, and black belt from that coach, and
Okay.
I'm still there today. So
Nice.
that was the whole split thing.
So yeah, that's. I mean, it sucks. I mean,
Yeah.
that it happened that way, but at the same time, you guys were able to like learn and grow from it. And there's hopefully there's no bad blood between you two.
No, 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 no. There's not. A month ago, he asked me to go teach at his new gym. He has a new
Oh,
gym now. He has another gym. He asked me like, "You want to come teach a class?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went down on Wednesday and gave the classes, and we talked about it in front of the students. When he introduced me, he was like, "This is one of my. This was my first student. He's a black belt now." And we had like a mini conflict, and he explained a little bit to the people. So there's no animosity there. I'm actually close to him, and he had some really great qualities as a coach. You know, jiu-jitsu is illegal in Quebec, the competition since 2016. So, which
really?
just it makes no sense, man. Like you can do boxing, but you can't do jiu-jitsu, but you can do judo. So it makes no sense. But anyways,
What?
yeah, it's the dumbest thing ever. But every time I competed, I was going to Toronto, Niagara Falls, to like Boston. So that's 6+ hours every time. And he would always come with us for the weekend. So he was very, we were having like summer parties and stuff like that. So he was very like, he would take everybody and bring us to the same place. If we would compete, he would take his whole weekend off and come with us and coach us. So he had great qualities as a coach, and he was very involved in the academy. So it's fun that we managed to put our differences behind us and just start to be friends again at some point. You know, so it's right now it's fine. But it was rough for a while, and we were both very invested in all that, like our relationship, but also the gym and all that. So I think it was hard on him, the split, and it was hard on me definitely because it was my gym. as much as his, and I opened it on my street. Yeah, so I would pass in front of it every day. So it was very, very hard for me. And one thing that was very hard, is I used to go train every Saturday in Montreal, because now I'm with Gracie Baja, but I used to be with the Brazilian top team.
Okay.
And so I used to go to the BTT headquarters in Montreal at Fabio Holanda's gym,
Mm-hmm.
and I would go there for the open mat every Saturday, and it was awesome. And there were so many great people there, and Fabio included. The head coach is an amazing, amazing guy. And when I left, a lot of people kind of took it bad, and maybe because I didn't explain myself to everybody. Not everybody knew the reasons behind why I was leaving, but a lot of people took it the wrong way. And I did feel like I lost a couple friends when I did that, but I still kept a lot, which is important for me.
Right.
So that was a very hard part for me, but fortunately, I joined a good school, and I met a lot of really, really awesome new people. So, but it was a process. It was hard at first, I'm not gonna lie, but right now it's fine. Those that needed, like, I still have a lot of friends from my PTT days, and I have a lot of friends from my Baja days now. So it's perfect, but it took a while.
Right. Gotcha. But that's awesome though, man. I'm happy you was able to keep that passion and kept that drive to continue to train. I the school that I'm at right now, H2O Martial Arts, has literally been the only school that I've trained at since I've started my jiu-jitsu journey. And
Awesome.
the most funniest thing about it is, like, me and my wife we'll play around with the idea of, like, moving and getting a bigger house or whatever, but we always there's like a couple things that has to be, like, in the criteria for me even to be able to look at this house.
Yeah.
It has to have a big enough basement to have my own gym, and it has to be close to the school.
Yeah.
That is it. And she understands the assignment perfectly. She'll be messaging me like, oh, I was just just looking, and oh, look at this house here. And she's like, before you ask, yes, it has a finished basement, it's spacious, and it's 15 minutes away from the school. All right, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Like, anything, if it don't meet those, obviously, like, I want to have enough rooms in the house, because my office, my kids, us, or whatever. But, like, no, has to have a finished basement, and it can't be too far from where I train at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely understand.
Oh yeah, and it's important because you spend a lot of time there. Like I said earlier, I was losing my passion for jiu-jitsu at some point as a purple belt, and
Mm-hmm.
it's probably all the negativity and the weight of that conflict, which was hard for me. But eventually, it came back. And once it came back, it never left. And I love jiu-jitsu more than ever right now.
Yeah.
And that's why I not only started teaching, I started teaching again, but I eventually had my blog about martial arts, and I started doing that, and I started teaching on BGG Fanatics and stuff like that. So I love to share what I know, and I love to share my perspectives and knowledge. So it was very fun for me to have the space I needed to grow back into a passionate jiu-jitsu athlete, so my coach was very, very good at giving me the space I needed to fall back into it. But once I started, I started where I left off. That's for sure. It didn't take that much time.
Yeah, and the rest is history, as they say.
Oh yeah, it is. But there's still a lot to do. The journey is just starting. I got my black belt a while ago, and a lot of people say that's where it starts.
That's where it starts. That is
exactly.
where it starts. Yeah,
you build the foundation for so many years, and now you get your black belt, so now you can start. Okay, perfect. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I can't wait, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to, eventually get to that point where I get my black belt, and just to kind of see what other opportunities that that comes along with that.
Yeah. So I remember in one of your podcasts, I was listening, and you were asking the person what was the hardest belt.
Yeah.
And so what for you? What was your hardest belt? Like which one? I don't remember your answer on that one.
Well, I kind of touched bases on the first on the intro episode when I was kind of giving a background about myself, but mentally and on a very mental and physical aspect, man, it was my purple belt. it was a lot of stuff going on, personally with with my marriage, family, dealing with the loss of my father, my mom getting sick and everything else. So it was grueling because at that point I was done. Like I was done with jujitsu. I was I was just mentally out of it because I couldn't focus on it. Everything around me was taking so much precedent over jujitsu to the where it wasn't even fun. It wasn't even fun anymore. Like I wasn't excited about going to classes. I was kind of just going off of just muscle memory at this point. Like, yep, Tuesday's coming up, I got class. Thursday comes around, I got class. Wednesday, Friday morning comes up, I have morning classes. So it was very, 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 very grueling, man. But I can say, like, if it wasn't for my wife, when we finally started, things started to get back on track, my wonderful instructor and my awesome training partners, man, if I didn't have them, this wouldn't be happening right now.
Yeah, I get that.
But that was
Well,
purple was definitely my hardest rank. Yeah.
well, it looked like it for sure. For what you're telling me, it probably looks like a very, very hard time, and it's fun that you found like maybe support a little bit and a way to distract your mind a little bit during training. Because if we speak about the belts, like the five belts, really, I always I feel like the hardest belt is always going to be the white belt in general.
Yeah, of course.
Because
That's where we
honestly, you
start.
just suck
Yep.
unless you're like Nicky Rod and you're just like you can rustle out everybody. Unless you're that 0.1% of the people, your white belt is going to be fun, but in the same way, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
so, so I just always feel like white belt is the hardest one. Blue belt is the one where you kind of start like beating up the white belts a little bit. Yeah, maybe like I say beating, but like probably a lack of better terms. But and for me, it was probably the same as you because of the whole conflict I talked about. It was a very hard time for me with all the changes. My purple belt,
Yeah.
blue belt was a great belt for me. I was training 6 days a week. I was competing everywhere. I was having a blast, and like it took 90% of my life really. I was working and training. That's all I did. I had a breakup just before my blue belt, and that was my all my focus was on jiu-jitsu for all my blue belts. So that was probably the easiest belt for me.
Yeah.
And after that, purple was very rough for the reasons we talked about earlier. And I think brown belt was pretty easy. I just trained because the more you go in your belts, the less pressure I think you feel. At least for me, like I wasn't feeling pressured at purple belt. I'm not brown belt or black belt either. Brown belt, you just train. You
Yeah.
train, you enjoy yourself, and you do whatever you want. So I think brown belt was pretty easy. The only thing that made it a little bit hard is that whole COVID thing, which was a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
That was another huge factor when it came to purple belt
yeah.
right because yeah I was like right after the I guess you want to say the ban to like to congregate and everything else was lifted. I think it was like maybe like a month after is when I tested for my purple belt. So it was
Oh,
like I
okay.
was out of shape. I was out of shape because I wasn't training. I was working so much because my instructor. Shout out, man. I know I said this a lot, but shout out to my instructor, man. This dude is awesome. I'll get into about that in a minute. But I was working a lot. I was just doing so much, and that was not jujitsu related. We had our second daughter the week before shutdown happened.
Oh
So it
man.
was rough, man. It was really, really rough. Like that whole 2 years of being a purple belt was so rough. But yeah, man. But as right now, as a I'm only been a brown belt for like a month. But yeah, it's the weight has been lifted, and jiu-jitsu has became extremely more fun again because like right now I'm this is this I'm you're at the finish line. Well, not necessarily the finish line, but you're right there. Only
Yeah.
way that you're going to not become your black belt at this point in your career is either you die or you just stop training.
Exactly.
That is
Yeah,
it. That
for
is it.
sure.
Either you're
At
just
brown
gonna,
belt, you pretty much can't stop. You need to
yeah,
keep on. You
yeah,
you
like
put so much time and effort in it. You just keep on,
yeah,
keep
because
going.
like that transition from white to blue belt, obviously, it's that statistic of like everyone stops at blue belt. Like blue belt is the hardest because once people get their blue belt, they just fall off. They just disappear. I've seen it happen in in live
Yeah,
and living color. Purple belt is like okay, yeah, you're kind of there. You maybe fall off, maybe not. But once that purple turns to brown, you have no choice but to keep going. You're
exactly.
right there. You're another 2 years, 1.5, 2 years, minimum to getting your black belt. Yeah, so I can't stop now. I can't.
No, for sure.
But yeah, man. If you have any other questions for me, if there's anything you want to plug about your school, about your competing, about whatever it is, man, the floor is all yours.
All right. Well, one thing I'm gonna it's gonna sound a little bit weird, but like we talked a little bit earlier about the impacts, because honestly, I don't mind speaking. Like I can probably fill any time frame you want me to speak, but
Yeah.
like there's a couple things I'd like to talk about, or at least say. We talked about impacts on our lives, and you gave a good example during your purple belt. I think jiu-jitsu probably served as some kind of therapy for you at
Oh
some point,
yes. Oh yes.
and during breakups and doing, like, for me it is a therapy. It takes away the stress from my job. My job is very stressful and high paced, and jiu-jitsu, when I'm training, I'm not thinking about my job,
Right.
and so it's very therapeutic for me, and it covers so many things that I need in life. The first one is obviously that, like, I need some kind of escape route for something. Some people play video games, some people are gonna watch movies, and I train.
Mhm.
And I love to learn, but I'm gonna love to learn if it's about something I like. Like, I have a little bit of selective motivation. So something I don't like, I'm not gonna be motivated. And
Yeah.
jujitsu kind of put me so much in love with it. It made me so much in love with the sport and the discipline, that I started really being focused on it, and it helps me. I love to learn, and this I'm so interested in this that I try to learn every day. So it gives me like this challenge of knowing more, trying to know everything. So honestly, not only is it good therapy, it's a good way for me to keep my mind going and think and like try to understand all the concepts and stuff. It helps me be I can get creative, like for the instructionals, for the blog, for when I teach. I try to build classes that have a system in it, like a concept, and work through it and go through it. So it gives me a chance to be creative, and it's a great workout, to be honest. And on top of all that, it's super fun. So these are what the main things it brings me. Like, and then obviously there's you can travel for it, and there's many different areas you can go. But I think overall, it had a lot of benefits for me. Obviously, like everybody else, there's some negative points. Like, I've missed a lot of birthday parties that I just didn't think about it because I was teaching, I couldn't be there, or stuff like that. I've missed events. Obviously, I sacrifice a lot of time with my friends that don't train and my family. So there's like negative points in the way, but that was a choice.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I was so into it. I was like, well, this is what I love. So I'm gonna focus on this and prioritize this a lot more than the rest, I guess. Except, like, I'm in a relationship, so obviously that's my always my priority. But I do spend a lot of time training. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
so do I.
yeah. Well, it's normal, I guess. And one thing that I didn't like, I mentioned earlier, two things I talked about being having access to all the greatest coaches and all that. And it's fun that right now all the best coaches in the world are spreading their knowledge. If you take Atos, for example, like, obviously their school is very high level, competition wise.
Yep.
Well, most of them have their instructions that they're sharing, but you can also go on Atos online and all that stuff like that. So it's fun to see that the greatest coaches in the world are obviously probably making it for money, but still, at the end of the day, they're sharing their knowledge outside of the walls of their gym, which in the older times, it was very, very strict. Like, the knowledge from inside this gym, you can't go out. It has to stay inside and use it in competition. And that's why they probably had all that stuff about the Creante and people that leave a team for another team, and the kind of the fear of the knowledge being showed to the other teams, rival teams, and stuff like that.
Uh huh.
So So I think it's a very fun time to be training jiu-jitsu right now because of all the all the knowledge we have access to.
Definitely, definitely.
And one thing that was cool when I went to ADCC in 2022 in Vegas 2 months ago,
Yep.
while I was there, I spoke to so many people that are like, for example, there's a, if you look at, like I spoken a couple of times to Jacob Couch, from Pedigree Submission, and he was spending a lot of time with the fans. He was just happy to be there, and obviously like Bernardo Faria, you see him, he's super gentle and very nice. So like, I got a chance to speak with so many people, but one thing that was awesome that I want to point out, sorry, is after the first competition day, Saturday, everybody was leaving. But there was a place, like a room next to it with a lot of like little stands. And Gordon Ryan was there and he had like a 2 hour line in front of him. And Gordon, after competing that day, instead of going to rest, he stayed there for 3 hours signing autographs, signing t shirts, signing the book, speaking with people and meeting them one by one. He was standing in the corner and he just stayed there for hours.
Yeah.
That was very, very cool. I was in that line. I waited in that line for an hour and a half, and I bought one of his rash guards, and he signed it for me and all that. And it was super fun to be near such an athlete, and it was fun. It was a once in a lifetime experience, honestly, to go there and see, like, being there with them in the moment with all the energy and meeting all these super. Because I'm a super fan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I watch this stuff every day. So for me, I was there as a fan, just watching and looking at all these people I look up to, and it was great. It was super fun. It
Yeah.
was an awesome time.
Yeah. Cause like right before his super fight with Andre Galval, Gordon Ryan was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and just to hear him talk about the love that he has for this sport. Obviously he's notorious. He's a notorious guy in jiu-jitsu. He's a,
Yeah,
he's a grade A shit talker, but granted he can back it up. But at
yeah,
the same time, and he is one of the most humblest and nicest guys I have yet to meet, but I want to meet so bad. Because
yeah,
like you said, like he go out there and compete, he trains, he teaches, he does all this stuff, but he still sits down and talk to everybody that wants to talk about jiu-jitsu.
yeah,
And that's phenomenal to me.
yeah. Because honestly, everybody, like, there was no athlete left really at the end.
Right.
Only him. Everybody was gone. Everybody that was competing at least were like, I'm competing tomorrow. I'm gonna rest. And he was like, all right, I have 3 hours in front of me of just signing autographs. You know, it's for the fans, it's very important, honestly. But yeah, you said it pretty well. Like, he's obviously a top level grappler and like a top level shit talker too. But I think that's for money, really, because to be honest, he's like he has a Conor McGregor thing going on that he talks a lot of shit, but like you said, he can back it
He
up.
can back it up like like the best of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, right now, in Nogi, obviously he is the best, and there's I don't see anybody who's better than him right now in Nogi,
No.
and he's so obviously he can back it up. But he was very nice in person. To be honest, he was super gentle, very like he was pretty. I felt that he was real and kind of genuine, which is pretty cool. So do you want to talk about that a little bit, like the jiu-jitsu scene a little bit?
You know what? Yeah, we got a little time. We got a little
All
time. So
right.
if you want to add a little bit more to it, we can.
Well, I don't. Do you watch, like? Do you train both gi and no gi?
um, sort of, kind of, but
Okay.
we're predominantly a gi dependent school. But yeah, we
Okay.
we dabble on no gi from time to time.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Really, I train gi a lot more in my life than I train no gi. But I still follow jiu-jitsu a little bit, so I watch all the events really and all the competition and tournaments and stuff like that. Um, we talked about Gordon, how dominant he is, and I have how I see this. Like, if you look at Gordon, like in a match, he's not faster than the rest. He's not. I've been told that his isometric power is incredible, but like he competes again with the biggest guys in the world. So obviously they're all strong. So that's not his advantage. He's not that fast. He's pretty relaxed. So like it's hard to understand what's going on there. Like, how could he be slower than the rest, really, and still like toy with everybody like they're white belts, you know? And
Yeah.
it's insane. It's like you spoke about MMA a little bit. Like I don't know if you saw Anderson Silva in his prime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Anderson Silva was, oh yeah, he was fast, but his whole style was around timing, and I call that the Matrix effect. Like Anderson would just move his head a quarter of an inch away from the hands and not get hit, and just play with his hands in his back.
Yeah.
And I think that Matrix effect is what makes Gordon that great. Probably is the fact that if he's not stronger or faster than the rest, and they're all world champions, so maybe his technique is better. But I get a feeling that guy, when he rolls, the people in front of him, like the speed of the match in his mind is just like in slow mo.
Yeah.
You know, because he always has his foot at the right place, hand the right grip, and he like nobody's getting any points on him. They're not passing. He's always it's weird. It's hard to understand.
Very
You
loose,
know?
very technical, very
Yeah,
technically sound. With like
yeah.
he's in tune. Like he has he's in tune with jujitsu.
Oh yeah. And that's something that it's not easy because when you get to a point where you don't train as much for whatever reason, like, and I'm sure you, like you said, you've had parts where you don't train as much. uh, if something's happened in your life and you're not training as much or you just don't have time, you see it on the mats though, because
Oh
your
yeah.
timing is going to be a little bit off, your cardio is going to be off, and so these guys don't really have that because they train all the time. So something has to be there that we, like me, maybe I can't understand what's going on at that level, because these guys are better than me for sure. They're better than us. And so it's always fascinating for me to watch his matches. And I'm like, how is that possible that he's manhandling these people in a slow way and it's working? Like, if I try that, I'm going to get destroyed.
Utterly destroyed.
Yeah. So like how does it do it? And there's a couple of people like that are fun to watch. I watch a lot of Guy, and I like Tainan Dalpra a lot, the Art of Jiu-Jitsu guy. And his style is so fundamentally sound. It's like it's almost effortless, and that's rare. It's hard. I envy these guys, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's fun jiu-jitsu, man. To be honest, it's so much fun, so much. It's such a great thing, and you just hope that you're not going to get injured too much.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was very
I'll suffer.
fortunate.
I haven't suffered like really bad injuries. The normal wear and tear on your body when it comes to jiu-jitsu, like your joints hurt, fingers
Yeah,
are stiff and everything else like that. But man, there's no greater feeling. There's no greater feeling to me right now than the pain of jiu-jitsu, rather.
yeah, yeah. Well, me injury wise, I was very lucky over the years. I've had one really big one. It was last year in November. I have a 60-70% tear on my LCL
Ooh.
in my knee. I was using a lasso sweep, and the way the guy kind of lifted, I was gonna sweep him, and I tried to block him in the air so he didn't fall on his face. And what happened is I heard something pop in my knee and a tear, like if you rip apart a t-shirt.
Ooh.
I was like, oh man, this is not good. But I was very fortunate in a way that some of my students were there, and because it's not the other guy's fault, it's completely my fault. So I kind of popped my own knee by myself. And I had a student there. His wife works at the hospital, you know, in the um, in the department that take all the radio, like the pictures and the X-rays and stuff.
Yeah.
So right away, like she was on the case, and she got me a scan the next morning. And right next to me, one of my students is an orthotherapist who looks a little bit like a chiropractor. So he popped my knee back into place, and he treated it right away. So I was very, very happy with him.
Awesome.
Yeah, the next day I already had all my scans. I had met the doctor. My knee was back in place, and I started physio the next day. So I didn't have it in 2 days, and all that was done. Even my first meeting with my physio. So I was very, very fortunate to have these people around me. So that helped a lot. That happened on Monday, and the Thursday I still gave my no-gi class.
Just
But
can't stay away.
yeah, I was just teaching some basic stuff that did not require any pressure on my leg. And then I took a month off to try to heal a little bit, and then Christmas happened and all that. So when I came back in January, I started flow rolling a little bit, and I was teaching again and stuff like that. But I was very fortunate. That was my only real injury. Like obviously, I've had like broken fingers and stuff like that, but nothing serious really.
All
The
right,
knee was a
gotcha.
pretty bad one though.
Cool.
But yeah, so for me, that pretty much covers it. I think we covered like the most important thing that every jiu-jitsu people want to talk about.
Definitely. I know
Yeah, I don't know if you have.
we kind of went on a little tangent, but that's just the price we pay when you get a chance to sit down and talk about jiu-jitsu. So
Yeah, and I'm open about like I'm not a very I'm open to talk about anything really. So I'm not a very shy person. So if like anything you want to talk about, I'm okay with that.
gotcha. But no, I would definitely love to have you back, man.
Anytime you want.
I encourage everybody who I do interviews with, like I would love to have you guys back, later on down the line and definitely, chop it up some more about, about our journey, because the journey doesn't stop until, we're 6 feet under. So there's always going to be, room to talk about jiu-jitsu. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, anytime you want, just send me a message and I'll be fine. Like, keep me posted, and I'm okay with coming back anytime you want.
Awesome. Well, that's the end of today's episode. I would like to thank our guest Eric once again for coming in and sharing his knowledge and experience with us. I hope you guys, learn and grow from our tales. Please go and follow our Facebook and Instagram page to stay up to date on all future episodes. This has been Talk Your Jits podcast. Keep rolling, keep grinding, and remember, long live jiu-jitsu. Have a great day.